Now, fly line comes in, this is 90 feet. That's what most all fly lines are. There's 90 feet of fly line here. And as we talk about fly line, you almost have to talk about fly line system, because in order to get to this point, you're going to need, in order to fish, you're going to need a line set up with 4 different lines. So you'll have backing on the reel, you'll have line on the reel, which this one already has, this one has. Then you're going to add a tapered leader, and then we have to talk about tippet. Okay, so that's the fly line, but as long as we're on the subject of fly line and reels, let's go ahead and talk about the rest of the setup. So, probably this reel is easier to see. So backing, let's start by talking about the backing. There's 2 reasons why you would put backing in a fly reel. And this is where we're going to get into the discussion about the larger arbor. But the first one is to fill up space in the reel. Now that's where, if you fill that space up, then we're back to that discussion where for every turn you make, you're going to get more wind of the line. The second thing that backing is for, and again, this is very, very prevalent in saltwater fishing. It's not been as prevalent with trout fishing, but you never want to run into this problem and not have it. It's going to be that one time you hook that 3-4 pound fish and you're in some bigger water where it has lots of room to run, and it gets past your 90 feet of fly line, and now it's into the backing. So what it does is adds extra length to your line. That's the purpose. So it is made it's a braided Dacron line that can be anywhere from 12-pound test in strength up to 30-pound test in strength. Now, most backing comes with in 50, 100, even 500 foot spools, because the other thing that's important to know about the reel is when you get a new reel, it will say on there how much backing to put on it, and with the 90 feet of line that can go in this reel. So if you were talking about that reel versus that reel, the backing and the line are certainly going to be different. So it's important to know that, because if you buy too much backing, you don't really know where to stop. And in most cases, I'm going to say that with most new fly reels for trout fishing, you're going to buy a 100-foot spool. That's usually pretty typical, and then you're going to use it all. Okay, so let's move on to, so now you've got your backing and you've got your fly line. Now, again, I'm going to go back to this setup because you will get all of this done for you when you receive it. Tying the backing on is a knot issue. Tying the backing to the leader or to the fly line, that's another knot. You need someone to help you do that. It's a buddy system type thing to get to this point. Again, that's why I would encourage you to do this. Now, moving on from, so now you're at your fly line, you have a welded loop, and you're ready to start fishing. So now you have to talk about the leader and the tippet. Now keep in mind, all through this system, everything has to balance and weight accordingly. So this is a 5-weight rod. This is a 5-weight reel with 5-weight line. Okay, now that you're at that point, you want to fish certain flies. So leaders, and most typical leaders today, and for our purposes, are going to be 7.5 feet or 9 feet. And then they're going to be designated by an X. Now these two have to match perfectly. For instance, if I'm going to use a 9-foot 4X tapered leader, I also have to make sure I always have a 4X spool of Tippet. They have to match. So here's the way this works. I will go ahead and take one of these 9-foot leaders out, and this is a whole other issue that I could talk about. People who talk about how to get the leader off of here without making lots of knots in it. That's not a way to talk about that later. Okay, so this is a 9-foot tapered leader. At this end where the loop is, the diameter is, this is the butt end, and it's the thickest end. And it's about 20-pound monofilament test at this end. Now, and because this is something you should do anyway, is just to stretch all these coils out, is stretch it through your fingers before you put it. See how it starts to lay out better. Stretch it, stretch it, stretch it. And as you do that, you're going to feel it taper down. Okay, so now if I was drawing a picture of the tapered leader and really exaggerating, it would look something like this. It starts this diameter at the top or at the butt, where it's connected to the fly line, and it tapers down like this. And when it gets to the X, the 4X, that's going to be the diameter for the rest of the line, the leader. Now, in describing the X is what it defines is the break strength for the diameter of the line. So that's how it works, is whatever that line breaks, that's the break strength or the X factor. Now, some of these, this particular reel, and you might just want to keep this with you all the time, is it actually has a breakdown of the different sizes of X's. Now, a lot of people will confuse. This is where they get confused. Is when it says, like, this is 9.5 pounds. Like if you were bass fishing or something. But that is not the factor that you want to consider when you're fly fishing. So back to this tapered leader. The way this is going to work is the first 7 feet of this leader is where the taper is. And then the last 2 feet, so I'm going to go about like so, all of that is the same diameter, and this is considered your tippet. That is the same as what's on here, is what's on the last 2 feet of the tapered leader is what's on this spool. So what's going to happen here is you're going to start fishing with your tapered leader. You're going to put your fly on the end of the tapered leader. But what's going to happen if you're in a stream, and if it's not happening, you're not hitting some of the best holes. It's going to break off, and it's going to break off again, and it's going to break off again. Now let's do it one more time. So now you're up to a foot. Now this is where you can now you're at an 8-foot leader, but if you want to stay at a 9-foot leader, now this is where you would tie on some more tippet. And we're going to talk about that knot later, how you would do that. Or wait until you get up into your 2 feet. The problem that you're going to have is when you're deciding when to do that is when you get past that 2 feet and you start feeling that that taper. Now you're trying to tie something this big around something that big, and that sometimes is not good for knots. So at the end of the fly line, and we'll talk about how to attach these two things together, these two ends together properly, because when we're doing knots, we'll talk about that, because believe it or not, more people do it the other way than the way it ought to be. And the other key thing to remember, so I want to get back to the X. So whether you're looking at okay, so this one happens to be 9 foot 5X, and it says 4-pound test. This one says 9 foot 4X, and it says 6-pound test. 7 foot 9.5-pound test. Okay, that is not how you want to decide what leader and tippet to use. How you want to decide what leader and tippet to use is based on the fly that you use. So here's a calculation for you to think about when you're doing that. Because the reason you want to do that is if you're using, let's say you've got a big streamer, a bead head streamer, so it's heavy, and you've got 5X leader and tippet on. That's pretty small for that. What's going to happen is it's too light to throw something that heavy, and it's going to fall all over the place because you don't have your balanced, your system is no longer in balance. You've taken it out of balance by doing that. Conversely, if you put on this leader, which says it's 9.5 pounds, that's 3X, and you want to throw, say, a number 12 or 14 dry fly, this is so heavy that, again, it's going to destroy your balance system. So the right way to think about this system together is the size of the fly, let's say, and I'll try to give you some generalities with this too. The size of the fly, let's use a number 12 as an example. So you have a number 12 dry fly. If you divide that 12 by 3 and by 4, you're going to get two options. If you divide it by 3, 3 goes into 12 4 times, right? So that means you would use this one. That's the number. 3 goes into 12 4, so I'm going to use 4X and 4X tippet. The reason I say and 4 is, let's pretend like you have a size 12 beadhead nymph. Now the beadhead nymph is a little heavier than the dry fly. So if you divide it by 4, then it goes into 12 3 times. Then I would use this 3X. That's an important distinction to understand, because most people would just look at it and say, oh, these are big fish, or look, I've got, boy, I want to have a strong, 6-pound test on there. It's really not about that. It's really the reason that whole X factor is in there is so that you can stay balanced, and it will make a difference in your casting.